Hello, Wetaskiwin, and welcome back to part 2 of the Bill Elliot for Council interview. Bill, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you,
Good,
Scott.
good. It's a week later, but I noticed you're wearing the same shirt.
Because you did the interview on the same day.
I know, I'm just bugging you.
People need to know that.
You made a comment. Thanks for joining us again, Bill, for part 2. Yes, people do need to know that. Although, I was going to wear the same shirt as I wore yesterday, but I'm wearing black shirt today. Anyways, welcome to part 2, Bill. We're going to talk about a whole lot of other stuff. Apparently, Bill has 28 pages of notes to go through, so I'm only going to talk just a little bit. I'll keep my comments very, very short.
No, you go right ahead with your questions.
Alrighty. Let's start with taxes. I know that taxes is always a hot topic on elections. It comes up every single time. What are your plans, or what is your plan to help either keep taxes where they are, hopefully lower them, or are you planning on raising them? What's your goal with taxes if you hit council?
Well, taxes are 1/3 from businesses, are 1/3 from the public and 2/3 from the businesses. So we need to have businesses in Wetaskiwin. If we're going to have businesses in Wetaskiwin, then we have to have people want to come to Wetaskiwin. And if we want people to come to Wetaskiwin, then we have to be proud of our community, and we have to be excited, and we have to let people know that it's a great place to be. All this negativity does not help us whatsoever. So that's one thing. The more businesses we have, the more our taxes will go down. Excuse me. And I think when people shop out of town, that hurts our local economy for one thing. And when you give your address or phone number to Staples or another business that's not in our community, when we ask Staples, why don't you come to Wetaskiwin? They say, well, people go to Leduc, Camrose, and South Edmonton Commons, so you don't need a store in Wetaskiwin. So you don't have to give your address and phone number when you go shopping in those other places. But I think the main thing is, Scott, we need to talk positively about our community. If people want to maintain the same level of services, then we have to have the taxes going pretty much at the same rate. I certainly am not, in this time of COVID, when people don't have jobs, they have fewer jobs, less to do, and the whole economy increasing with inflation for food and all of those things. I don't want to raise taxes. That's certainly not something that I would want to do, and I would work to make sure that we had as lean a budget as possible to maintain that. Right.
Cool. Great. We don't want to have taxes. I'm a homeowner. I'm a business owner, and I want to keep taxes where they are. So that's or lower them.
My son pays $26,000 a year in taxes.
Really? So. From Coach's Source for Sports? And
well, for his homes and his business. And
wow.
Stuff. Yeah, so.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's a lot of money.
No kidding. No kidding. Do you think that the tax money that the city is getting is being allocated appropriately as far as do we need to dig in and like rip everything apart and be like, you know what, there's gross misspending? That's kind of the question I'm getting at. Or do you think it's, this is just how it is because this is how towns work? We always hear that, this is such a waste of money, that is such a waste of money, yet people still want services. But do you think we are spending wisely as a city?
I think there are a lot of efficiencies that could come to pass if we look closer at what we're doing. We try to keep user fees down because we would like to encourage people. I'm saying we, I'm talking as a city person, I'm sorry, but I would like to keep the user fees down so people can access. You want as many people as possible using all of our facilities. And we want to do that. They are subsidized right now to a large extent, and I don't want to see that go away either, because then people wouldn't have anything to do in their free time. Mm-hmm. But I don't know about cutting services. When you're used to having your roads plowed at a certain time and the grass cut around the city and those kinds of things, that's all goes back to city pride as well. And I think we need to want people to like what they're seeing instead of complaining. Complaints are not a good thing. So, but I really think there are some efficiencies that we could find in Wetaskiwin.
Great. You talked a little bit about attracting business because they do pay 2/3 of the tax base in Wetaskiwin. Do you have a plan for how you can bring better, or not better, but more businesses to Wetaskiwin?
Well, if if you were driving through Wetaskiwin, would you stop and start a business? So I really think just I was downtown today walking around and it's messy around so many businesses. Like there's garbage and there's cups and there's all these different. I picked up a number of things on Main Street today. Just having your business and the community look clean is one thing. You only get one chance to make a first impression. So if people are coming here, we need to look good. We need to look good, and it's kind of like dating. I mean, if you look at somebody and they're dirty and smelly and everything else, you're probably not going to ask them for a date. But if they look great, then maybe you might. So I think that's the main thing is we have to look good, and we have to have positive things going out in our newspapers. Like to have negative things. If I was going to invest in Wetaskiwin, I'd read the newspaper. I'd go online. Well, if you go online and read our newspaper, I'm not sure that you might want to come to Wetaskiwin. So it reflects on all of us, Scott. Everybody who lives in Wetaskiwin is an ambassador for our community.
So you're going to promote people to step up and clean up and be proud of their community, and that's just something that you do verbally to talk to businesses, or is it a bylaw concern when there's trash about your business if you're not picking it up to implement some sort of a program?
Yeah, there was a program called Take 5 a number of years ago, and it meant take 5 minutes every day at the start of your day to walk around your business or your church or your school or whatever facility you're in and just clean up around the outside. It's that simple. So that's what I see, but I don't know about involving bylaw. Bylaw gets enough negativity without getting tickets for
trash
because you got a little bit of garbage in front of your store or something. So
right. Yeah, I mean, we got a long ways to go. I mean, Wetaskiwin downtown has been, the situation with the vacant buildings, that's been around a long time. So what about tax incentives for new businesses? Is that something, or tax cuts or breaks, would you to bring people in? Is that something that you'd look at?
Again, that was tried. But if you give tax incentives, that means that the taxpayers and the business community are actually giving some of their tax dollars to let another business come into the community.
Yeah.
So what do you want to, it's a hard spot to determine that. I think we should give some incentives. In some communities, they had different businesses donate so much money a month, and it went into a pot to help new businesses. And then once the new business got going, they paid the businesses back. So it was kind of like a non-interest loan.
That's interesting.
To get people going. But as far as incentives, if you want to start a business, I really think that you probably have a pretty good business plan anyway. If you think, I mean, you look at how many new businesses we've had here in the last little while, and a lot of them seem to be doing well without incentives. So I'm not sure that I would want to see a whole bunch of money going to incentives.
Okay. All right. Let's talk a little bit about services. I know that you had mentioned earlier that you're not a big fan of reducing or cutting services because our citizens love using the ones that we have. But is there any in your mind that we should be cutting, whether it's, hours at the recycling center, which I think have already been cut, or, I guess whatever you think. I don't know. I'm not you. So let us know. Is there any services you think that are?
I think maybe some of our services could be deployed differently. I don't know that everybody in public works needs to work from 8 till 5. Excuse me, Scott, I have a frog.
Yeah, take a drink, Bill.
But I don't know if everybody has to work from 8 till 5. Maybe they could work weekends. Grass grows in the weekends too. It grows after 6 o'clock at night. I know we can't get into cutting at the recreation grounds and stuff when there's people doing things, but there are certain things we could do. I think that we should have somebody working on weekends going around and cleaning up the garbage. We seem to accumulate a lot of garbage on our major roads on Fridays and Saturdays, and then people drive through. And again, you only get one chance to make a first impression. So I would have somebody that was cleaning up, even when our trucks are going back to to public works office and stuff. If you see garbage on the road, stop the truck and pick it up. Like, you don't have to drive past it. I mean, just keep the community beautiful. So that's where I see things anyway.
All right. So besides adding like more garbage collection or street pickup garbage, is there any other services you think Wetaskiwin's lacking? I've heard some comments regarding, a transit system between communities, or even for people that want to go about Wetaskiwin. I know there's taxis and stuff, or any other, services that you can think of that we're missing that you'd like to see come?
Well, when going back to your previous question, I don't know if we need to have garbage picked up every week. If people were recycling properly, and most people are, because we have a very good recycling center, and it's about 60% of our stuff does not go to the landfill. But I think that if people recycled more, we could have garbage pickup every second week, and that would save some money. So I'm sorry, back to your question.
The question was on if you wanted to add any other services, like not cutting services, but adding additional ones. So is there anything we're missing as a community that you think we should have and that you'd like to bring in or work for bringing in?
Well, I was working with Camrose and Leduc when I was on council as the mayor, trying to get a transit system. We were trying to get a ring road that would go from Camrose to Wetaskiwin and then to Leduc, or vice versa from Wetaskiwin. But it was going to cost about $13 a ride. Mm-hmm. And so I think Camrose started doing something like that, but how do you schedule it so that I get to Leduc in time to get to Edmonton for my work, if that's where I'm going to work, or if I'm going to shop? How do we schedule those things? There again, maybe we encourage people to shop locally rather than going out of town to shop. But and the transit, with regard to local transit, the city is subsidizing the transportation system as it is. And I know it's expensive. It's $7 a trip. And I think that's what it costs for a taxi. I've never taken a taxi in Wetaskiwin, but it's about the same. And so if you go for groceries, that's going to cost you $14 for a single person. And if you're a single parent and you've got two kids, that's $21 each way. That's really expensive. So it would be nice. So much of what the citizens of Wetaskiwin are paying for has been downloaded by the provincial and federal governments too. There used to be much more grants for transportation, and now they basically just go to the big centers. And so they're all building their LRTs and their subway systems, and we don't get anything.
Right. Yeah, that would be neat. All right, the next question is to wrap this section up. I know you're a big fan of local businesses. You've talked about it, or shop local. But let's say when it comes to providing services from businesses to the city, you receive two quotes. One is from a local business, and one is from an out-of-town business. And the out-of-town business is less, or substantially less, than the in-town business. Would you have any policy to, even though it's a higher cost, to use the local business versus the best price? The
city used to have a policy that when tenders went out, if a local contractor was within 5%, then the local contractor would get the job. But now there's a Western Provinces agreement, and there's other regulations that come from the government that if you're getting government grants to do some of the projects, you have to put it out and you have to take the lowest bid, or the lowest bid that meets all of the requirements. So yes, I would like to give the business to local, but at the same time, the city is regulated by the province and the feds as to what we can really do. I sit on the Health Foundation, and work is being done at the hospital, and they just cut the trees out here in the spring, and it was somebody out of Leduc. Well, we've got people in Wetaskiwin, in the county of Wetaskiwin, that cut trees, but AHS has a rule. They have certain people that do this certain jobs. So we have concrete people in Wetaskiwin, and they go to Red Deer for a concrete person.
Yeah,
that's AHS doing that. So these rules that the province has, don't help us very much with getting local contractors jobs for certain things.
But for the ones that wouldn't have the requirement, then 5%, 10%, is that kind of your limit on overages?
I would say yes, because there again, people say, I don't want my taxes to go up. And why did you spend so much on that job when you could have got it for this? And trying to keep all the people happy all the time is not possible, Scott.
Right.
So I think the city would have to, weigh each situation differently if there were no regulations governing.
Right. All right. Great. All right. Moving on to crime and homelessness. What do you think, Bill, what crimes impact Wetaskiwin the most? And would you have a plan that's not in place to deal with it that we don't already have? What crimes affect Wetaskiwin the most?
I think that what the crime is breaking and entering and just theft. I mean, there's things being posted all the time about vehicles being stolen and homes being broken into. I think one of the ways to get around that is not around that. You're never going to get around it, but report people. If you see something that looks suspicious, report it. Even if you think, oh, I'm not sure that that's something bad. Well, if it's something that's out of the ordinary, we need to report that. Don't get involved, though, because we don't want anybody getting hurt. But I think we need to make sure that the RCMP are aware of what's going on. And you might think it's a little incident, but if everybody reported these little incidents, maybe it leads to a pattern that the RCMP could put together and then maybe catch some people. I think we have a lot of people coming to Wetaskiwin to steal, and then they take their whatever they've stolen to another community. We've heard of that as well. So, but I think theft is the big one. Violence is family violence is something else, and I know that there are a number of organizations working to try and rectify that. But at the same time, it goes back to education too.
Right. So
that's my feeling about what really is a major crime in Wetaskiwin. The police reports might say differently.
Sure. Yeah, they do a report to council on, and you can see all the stats during certain meetings that they have. Speaking of the RCMP, do you think what are your thoughts on the local RCMP, from levels of service to response time to how you see the management throughout Wetaskiwin? What are your thoughts on the RCMP?
Firstly, being an RCMP member is a difficult job. I think that anybody whose family has an RCMP member and the member is leaving to go to work and you're not sure if they're coming home, that's pretty scary. I think the level of service in Wetaskiwin is very good. Response times, when I've talked to people who've had to call the RCMP, they've been quite okay with that. Part of the problem is that the dispatch comes out of Red Deer rather than having local dispatch, which we had many years ago. But we've had calls from the library when we've had some challenges at the library, and they've been at the library within 2 minutes. So I think the level of service that we get, the city's supposed to be getting 3 new members that are coming in. And I think that will help as well. My one concern about RCMP is that they don't all live in the community, and I know they don't want to live in the community where they're giving tickets and reprimanding people. But at the same time, some of the RCMP that we had here that stayed for a number of years lived in the community. They became part of the community. They contributed to the community, and the respect for the RCMP was very, very high. And they were members of our community. And so I know we can't mandate that, but
I was just going to ask you, can we mandate that? No.
The only person that can be mandated to live in Wetaskiwin is the fire chief, who must be within 10 minutes of the fire hall, and the rest can't be mandated. But just think, if they lived in Wetaskiwin and spent their money in Wetaskiwin, it would certainly help our economy. But my related to the RCMP, I feel very comfortable with the job they're doing.
All right.
It's a tough job.
For sure. All right, you mentioned that we only have one shot to make a first impression to potential business or tourist or whatever. How do you, when you come to Wetaskiwin and you see some of the loitering and the panhandling and the drunken intoxication or public intoxication, obviously that is an eyesore. Do you have a plan, or what's the best way to deal with that in your opinion?
Number one, I think that there should be more policing of the liquor stores. There have been videos sent out of intoxicated people going into liquor stores and purchasing liquor, which is not allowed. And I think that's one thing that could be done by whomever.
Is that a bylaw officer that would do that, or
it could be a bylaw or peace officer? It also could be the RCMP, but I think that there should be a little bit more stringent checking on that. And to me, there's Edmonton downtown on White Avenue has toilets. They have outdoor biffies, and I think we need to have a few that we could have so people who are wandering around downtown, or you and I who are shopping downtown, have a place to go to the washroom. We don't have a lot of facilities. We don't have one at the playground near the high school. We don't have one at Jubilee Park. There are, even on the walking trails, there are no toilets. Now I know they get vandalized. Yes, they get pushed over, and it would cost a little bit more for concrete ones. But I think that would be one of the things that would make people maybe less visible if they had to go to the washroom rather than going to the washroom outside beside a building or something.
Right.
Because the businesses all have signs up saying no public washroom.
Right.
And so they need to go somewhere. So I think that would certainly help.
Yeah.
As far as the panhandling, the city of Wetaskiwin was used to the regulators. The regulators, we all kind of knew and we know and accepted them and who they were, and they were not mean or rough. If they said, "Can you give me some money?" and you say no, they'd say, "Have a good day." We have other people who've come to our community now who aren't part of that group, and they're a little more aggressive and they're a little more assertive, and they've got a little bit more of a bad reputation. And driving into Wetaskiwin, you see vagrants on the street, you see people on the side of the highway and things, and it's not just in Wetaskiwin. There are other communities as well that have similar problems. So this is not unique to Wetaskiwin. I think that the people need to work, rather than complaining about it. I think we need to say, what can we do? And we've talked about a detox center in Wetaskiwin, and that goes all the way back to when Leroy Johnson was MLA, that Leroy tried to get a detox center. And I really think we should be looking for one. And we should be looking for a facility similar to the Hope Mission in Edmonton, where there's a facility where if you're intoxicated, you go there. But as you start to heal, then you can move up to a different level of housing, and you can even get a job. And so you become a productive member of society. And that's what we need. We need to have something like that. Plus, we need to have education programs. But again, this is federal and provincial money. This should not be coming from the citizens of Wetaskiwin, Scott.
Right. So do you have a plan then to, obviously there's plans in the motion right now that they have for the warming center and for, their homeless situation, but is there something that you can bring fresh to council that will help deal with the addictions and homelessness that you're talking about?
Just what I suggested.
Yeah, just what you suggested. Okay. So you talked about a detox center, like a treatment place. As far as a shelter goes, I know that when we had the pop-up one come up at Rock Soup, there was a lot of residents up in arms, like, not here, we need to get rid of this, which was illegal, so it made sense that it needed to go. But when it was downtown, we had everybody up in arms, for the last 3 years, businesses. When the proposal was by the mall, we had businesses and residents and churches, opposing that. If the city in general doesn't want this based on signatures and petitions, I mean, I know that the it seems like the angry ones yell the loudest. And so the people that are opposed or for something passionately, that's who you see. So, a perfect example of, in my opinion, of why nobody, and I think it could be because of how it was run, or it could be because of other reasons. But if people don't feel safe, then there's a huge problem. And so there's a perception right now that the homelessness and the vulnerable populations are creating the majority of the crime, and that if you put something to help them in their area, that the crime is going to go way up. Now, I don't know if that's true or if it's just perception or speculation. But so, what about that? Like, how do you deal with the residents that don't want to have it in their neighborhood, but yet we have to have it somewhere?
Yeah, it's called NIMBY, not in my backyard, right? And nobody wants it. But Scott, when we had the emergency shelter at City Hall, I was a volunteer down there before the open door. And at the most, we were having 22, maybe 30 people in the very coldest days in the wintertime. And they were coming in. And then to have this influx that came in this summer, I think we need to be getting other health authorities. If it's related to Maskwacis, then there should be Maskwacis Health involved. AHS should be involved. So we need to get people from other groups involved in Wetaskiwin, because again, this is not supposed to be a community problem. I mean, it's something that's a challenge to our community, but our community does not have the funds to fund all of that.
Right.
Did I answer what you were asking?
Well, I kind of wanted to know whether or not you will support or push through, a homeless shelter type of center, regardless of what 60 or 70 or 40% of the population say. Like, do you have preconceived notions of, I want to do this based on my platform, or do you want to follow the will of the public who says, yes, we want this, or no, we don't?
We are being elected by the people, so we should be listening to the people. When the liquor bylaw went through, there were a number of people who didn't want us closing our liquor stores at 10 o'clock at night, but the majority of people did. So we went with that. How do we find
out if Wetaskiwin, the majority of the residents want this sort of treatment center, whole, helping vulnerable people with kind of like the open door was suggesting when they first came, or when they came. How do you find out who wants that? Do you have to have some kind of community voting? Or because when you talk to people, like an example, they were able to get 600 signatures that said, we don't want this 10th city happening on that north end of town within 3 days. The city hall was packed full of people when the notion of having it by the mall popped up. The meeting that dealt with the homeless where it currently was downtown, that was just a packed city hall. So again, the angriest scream the loudest, and those are the ones that you notice. But how do we find out from Wetaskiwin whether this is something I would support in my neighborhood or not? I mean, I think a lot of people will say, I'll support it, which you said, not my neighborhood just a second ago. But like if we ask the question, it's going to open up on your block, are you good with it? And 95% of the people said absolutely not. Do we have to, at that point, work for other solutions? Or do we just say, you know what, guys, we need this. This is something we have to have. Like,
I will go back again to saying that
what the people want.
This should be funded from somewhere else.
Yeah.
If I tell you, Scott, that your taxes are going to go up 3% next year because we're going to put water and electricity into the ground behind Walmart, and then we're going to start to build more solid homes. And the next year after that, your taxes are going to go up again because now we have to provide for the cost of the operations and cleaning up and painting and doing all of these things. Are you going to be happy? And I just asked the question because I don't know if the community of Wetaskiwin would be in favor of having their taxes go up on a consistent basis to house 25 or 30 people in our community when a number of them still do have a home.
Gotcha.
The family may not want them, but they have a home. And so I'm an empathetic person, but I don't know how far we go. We have Canada Mortgage and Housing. They're supposed to look after housing in our community. They're supposed to help people out. We have social workers who are supposed to be helping out. I think our community has opened up really well and has helped many vulnerable people and marginalized people. And when somebody needs something, the city has come to the aid. When the little gal needed $250,000 for an operation in Texas, boom, it was done. Those kinds of things. On the Health Foundation, we keep getting donations to build things and provide equipment for the citizens. So we are a giving community. I just don't know how far the community wants to go to give.
Right.
And I know I'm probably not answering your question.
That's okay. I think we just have to ask the community, find some way of asking what the community definitively wants or doesn't want, and go on from there.
Right. And I don't know if you want to go to a plebiscite, because a plebiscite is going to cost $45,000. So,
yeesh. Well, yeah. Anyways, all right. It's a complicated issue for sure, Bill.
It is.
All right. We're going to move on. We're going to talk a little bit about the relationship with our neighboring communities. How do you plan on strengthening our relationship between our surrounding communities? Could be Musquechees, Millet, Ponoka, Camrose, that kind of stuff.
Don't forget the county and the Hutterite colony.
That's true.
I think we need to. We are not. My understanding is we're not having the best relationship with the county right now, and my response to that would be we need to have face-to-face chats. I think that if we want something at Musquechees, we need to be put on a council agenda for each of the 4 Cree Nations council meetings, and we go down and talk to them and meet with the chiefs. We used to have when we after the election, like after this coming up election, we would invite all of the elected officials in our area to just a meet and greet. So you invite all the school boards, you invite all the chiefs and councils, the county council, Millet, just have a meet and greet and just talk. No agenda or anything else, just to say, hey, we're going to be working together for the next 4 years. So what can we do together? So I think that's one of the main things. I think related to Musquechees, there's a fear. Some people in Wetaskiwin have a fear of going to Musquechees. If you've ever been to a powwow, it's wonderful. They're just great. It's like going to a fair. There's dancing and drumming, and then there's concession booths and those kinds of things. And it's just a lot of fun. So you could do things. They have the wild horse relays. There are different things down there that we could go to. Invite them to things that we do. That Canada Day rally at Reynolds Alberta Museum. I mean, there's 1,000 people came up on such short notice, all sitting there. People are going to be on September 30th, Truth and Reconciliation Day. There's going to be orange shirts all over Wetaskiwin, people supporting Musquechees. I think even when the farmers markets, we need to support the local farmers and the Hutterites who provide food for us and go out there and shop and get to know them. I did a walk, Scott, from Edmonton to Calgary called Walk for Common Ground, and it was to learn about treaties and things. And I did not know one person on the walk when I started. But when you walk with somebody for 30 minutes or an hour, you learn so much about them just by being face to face.
That's
and
true.
I really think that's the thing that we really need to do is just keep networking with people. And again, look for the positive. Don't just say hello and how are you? It's amazing how people will light up if you just say hi to them.
That's right.
Well, I just, I don't know. They need to just feel welcome. So
yeah, good answer.
That's what I would do. I really would have
Sure.
as much. We're raising a Treaty 6 flag at the Boys and Girls Club on Thursday, the 30th. I guess this will be out. We raised a Treaty 6 flag at the Boys and Girls Club on the 30th. But I mean, and then there was a march from the Heritage Museum. So there are things that people can participate in.
Sure, that's good for sure. They can. Speaking of truth and reconciliation initiatives, is there anything that you would add in or bring in that the city council hasn't currently done in regards to truth and reconciliation?
We had a year of Truth and Reconciliation in Wetaskiwin, the year the Truth and Reconciliation Commission came to Wetaskiwin. There are U of A online courses. There's the one on the history of Indigenous people, which is a really, really good course. I took it, and I see the Boys and Girls Club have been advertising how you can connect with it. It's very interesting, and part of my philosophy is seek first to understand. If you don't understand something, you're really not going to appreciate where people came from. And so if we learn more about Indigenous people, the things they went through with residential schools, the thing that they've gone through, even being in their own skin, trying to be in a colonized community, that's really difficult. I was up in St. Paul 2 weeks ago, and it was another walk. We're doing, it was a walk to honor treaty. And the same thing came out, that the prejudices that are out there and people don't understand. And we sat and had teaching sessions, and it's amazing. Like, we were only together for 3 days because it got canceled because of COVID, and people were crying, saying goodbye after we'd only been together for 3 days. So you just need to take time to get to know people. I took classes to build capacity for reconciliation at U of A in Augustana. They had workshops for 3 years. I went there, and it's a nice drive to Camrose. I learned something, and I learned a whole bunch about reconciliation. So I think that we just need to get involved. And I'm going to say there was, because it hasn't, it already happened, but Sisters in Spirit Day is coming up next week as well. And so those kinds of things we can get out when when different groups have different functions, different celebrations, and we should be trying to participate in them.
Great. For sure.
Northwest did Round Dance for 4 years, and we started off with about 50, and by the time the fourth dance came around, there were 300 people at the Round Dance in the drill hall. It was wonderful.
Cool. So
there are things out there, Scott.
Awesome. All right, moving on.
Do we have time? Or
we do. No, we're good. We're good. We're still good. A couple more questions, and then we're all done for tonight, Bill. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about current council and whether they're on the right track. What is our current council getting right? What do you think they're doing a fabulous job at?
I really think that they are communicating well with the community, and people who don't feel that they are, my question to them would be, have you ever been to a council meeting? Have you ever been to a budget meeting? Have you ever been to an open house? And a number of people that I understand complain a lot have never participated in any of these things. But council offers all of these different opportunities, and so I feel that they're being quite open. The budget meeting, and all the years that we had budget meetings, we had staff and council and maybe 3 people from the community when we're discussing a $33 million budget, and people just didn't come out, Scott. I don't think you need to listen to rant and rave. That's not going to help our community get better. And so to complain about a counselor behind their back, why not give them a phone call and say, can we meet for coffee and talk about it? I will give you the answers, but there's so much information goes out on social media, and then people start to believe it. And then they say, well, council's doing a terrible job. Well, if they actually got the facts. So me, in my role, if I got elected, would be, I'm going to be available to meet with you. And let's talk about what your concern is, or what information do you have that I don't have that maybe will help me make my decision better.
Right.
I think people need to be polite, and to say bad things about somebody, whether it's council or not. I mean, they do the same with staff. I mean, they're abusing first responders and hospital staff, for crying out loud. We're trying to save people's lives. So the whole tone of people.
You're talking about public, not what the current council is doing, right?
Well, okay, but sorry, but
that's okay.
That leads to the perception that council is not doing anything. Right. Is where I'm going with this.
Okay.
I mean, as soon as one person starts to get negative, they can, and it's easy to hide behind the screen or even a telephone. But meet me face to face and tell me what your problems are. So no, I think council is doing a good job. I think that to take a council through COVID the way they have taken the community through COVID, a situation they've never even had any experience dealing with, and we got through it. I think it was a very good job of leadership by council.
So I was going to ask you a COVID question later, but that answers it right now, so we'll skip that one later. But yeah, they definitely, the numbers weren't too terrible for Wetaskiwin for most of the pandemic.
Well, and between you and council, the community was updated regularly.
Yeah.
Anything new happening, it was there. It was,
right.
It was available to people. So.
All right. Is there any blunders you think the council's made as far as decisions or things they've implemented that they shouldn't have implemented or agreed to that you would have strongly opposed? You can think of.
Hindsight is always 20/20.
For sure.
Right. You and I, people could say, well, why did Scott ask those questions? Why didn't he ask those questions? Right?
That's true. People will say that. Probably someone's typing up the comments right now.
Yeah, I'm sure. So, but as far as blunders, I don't know of any blunders. It's been a challenge for council to get staff in City Hall. They've gone through managers and the finances really had some challenges there. From what I gather now, they've got the correct staff there, and so they're going to start building a community. But one of the things that has happened, Scott, is there's no history in City Hall. Everybody that's in City Hall basically has not been there more than 5 years, except for maybe 3 people. So there's not a history there. So you have to have a culture built up too between council and staff, and between council and I don't know if all of council gets along all the time. That might be a challenge as well. But I don't see that as being a blunder. That's you don't get elected with your friends. You get elected by the population. So right. I don't want to put council down. People don't realize that when you go home at night as a councillor, it niggles away in the back of your head all the time about everything. But I felt very comfortable. You can email me or talk to me anytime that you want, and I will certainly answer your question as soon as I possibly can.
Perfect.
And I think that this council is accessible the same way. That's where I was going.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Lastly, Wetaskiwin's biggest issue. You've talked about a few of our issues, but what do you think the biggest issue is? Is there an easy fix? And what's your ultimate vision for Wetaskiwin? I think you've talked about this in little bits throughout the whole interview. Proud of your city and cleanliness, and lots of activities and that sort of stuff. But if you had unlimited resources, like if taxes weren't a concern, what would you like to see in Wetaskiwin eventually? Okay. And, a lot of questions there.
The biggest problem I see is divisiveness.
Yeah,
and I don't want to see the city divided, and that's what I see happening right now. And it's an us them, and you don't care, and you don't understand, and the other people are going, well, you don't understand this side of it.
So how is that solved? Through communication, or?
I think we need to sit down. I know it sounds airy-fairy and fluffy, but I mean, we need to sit down. And from what I can see, even watching last night's council meeting, I mean, if I rip at you and then you want me to be nice to you, it's kind of hard for me to be nice to you when you just trying to strip off me. So I think that they need to play better in the sandbox. Everybody needs to play better and get along and say, okay, how can we do this? And maybe you start off with small groups, Scott, because the large group, you're never going to get to talk anyway. And just because you have the loudest voice doesn't mean you're the smartest person in the room either. So I think if you have 2 or 3 from each of the organizations and start off small and then get people's opinion, and then maybe even you break off into groups or something like that. But you need to talk, and you need to seek first to understand. You need to understand each other.
Right.
But don't shoot each other in the foot.
For sure.
Okay, so if I were king of the world and I had unlimited funding, I wrote down a number of things that I would do. I would pay off all the debentures in the city. That'd be the first thing. So then our taxes would never go up because we wouldn't have to be paying off all these borrowing we've done. I'd fix all the roads. We could have smooth roads and nobody's shocks would need to be replaced. I put solar paneling on all city buildings, and I'd find a way to subsidize everybody else's homes who wanted solar panels. So then we're going to help make the city greener. I'd build a new library. I'd build a new friendship center. I'd build a field house. And that's one of the things that I really would like to see is a field house in Wetaskiwin. Put turf, AstroTurf down on the football field, so then they could play longer seasons and we could have more sports. I'd put lights on all the ball diamonds so that we could have tournaments going all night long like Edson does. And I'd subsidize the city programs at a higher level. People would still have to pay, but they wouldn't have to pay as much.
Nice.
So if that all happened, I just think that it would just be wonderful.
It would be a great community, absolutely. No
question. And in addition to that, we would have enough money to build up a reserve fund. So if ever we got into a clutch situation, we'd have the money to solve that problem right now. So.
Well, hopefully you can solve our financial problems and implement some of those excellent dream goals so that you have there.
Well, wouldn't that be wonderful?
That would be.
If we could do that.
Awesome. The only other question I had for you, which wasn't on your list, federal election that we just had. How do you personally feel about the outcome of that?
I feel that the West is not represented again. We have Mike Lake there, who has been a very good MP as far as I'm concerned. Mike has his round tables and things. He tries to get opinions from people. Anytime I've sent him questions, he responds very quickly. But the money goes to the constituencies that have a liberal person. So if we don't have any liberal people here, so we're not going to see very much money. I'm not sure how many people in Alberta wanted to see Mr. Trudeau being our prime minister. He feels he's got the mandate from the country to run it now because he still ended up second in the popular vote. But anyway, I don't know how that happened.
So if you could compare your platform or your ideology to a platform, NDP, liberal, conservative, what would Bill Elliot be?
Oh my goodness!
You don't have to answer because it was a question I just threw out there.
I think I'd be a little bit of each. I'd be a little bit green and I'd be a little bit NDP because I think people need to have dental care and things who can't afford it. I definitely know we need to look after our environment. And then I think we need to have some social programs and reduce energy, but not because it's the oil sands, because that seems to be pointed out as the bad person all the time, which I don't agree with at all.
Great. Well, Bill, I am pretty much finished all my questions. Is there anything that you would like to get across to the community, statement or whatever you want to say? We can talk about other stuff if you want. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I would like to thank all the other candidates who let their names stand. It's not easy putting your name out there and having people ask you questions, and it makes you focus on what you want to do. And it makes you a better person. I'd like to thank all of them for having the strength to do that. I would just like to say that I feel very strongly that I have the experience. I have the networking to help. In my past, I've also had a lot to do with some of the ministers in our current government. I get along very well with our current MLA, Minister of Indigenous Relations. And I have a really good relationship with Masquachisa as well. So I feel strongly that I have the strength. I definitely have the energy to go forward and represent all of the community, not just a segment of our community. I feel very strongly that a single item candidate is not running for the correct reasons. You need to be looking after the whole population, all the demographics in our community.
Perfect.
And thank you, Scott. I really appreciate your enthusiasm after a day of work, and you got this enthusiasm every time. It's amazing. And I certainly appreciate what you do with your R&R newsletter as well.
It's my pleasure, my commitment, my service to the community, I guess you'd call it.
We're both leaving our community a better place than when we got here.
Perfect. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining our interview today with Bill Elliot. Bill Elliot for council on October 20th. Is that election day?
And the 13th is the advance poll.
The advance polls. There you are. Well, good luck in your campaign, Bill, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you again, Scott.
Bye, everybody. Wave bye, Bill.
Goodbye, everybody.
There you go.